They thought her pool was their free getaway, until one wrong dip turned them into a nightmare they'd never forget. Karen and her neighbors brazenly turned her pool into a party hotspot without a shred of shame. They thought they'd won and that she'd be powerless to stop them, until she decided otherwise. Sophie Jimenez, a 35-year-old woman, 36 weeks pregnant, stood in the backyard of her luxurious Austin, Texas home with fiery anger burning inside her, staring at the aftermath of yet another unauthorized pool party. Empty beer cans floated in the pool, like mindless debris defiling her private sanctuary. Wet towels were strewn everywhere, like stains on the custom stone deck she'd so carefully chosen. Cigarette butts littered the ground, like traces of disrespect left by the intruders. These people are bold, she thought to herself with a sardonic smile, while her eyes gleamed with a plan for retribution. Just a few weeks earlier, Sophie had envisioned this pool, with its shimmering turquoise water, framed by lush greenery, as the perfect spot to relax with her soon-to-be-born child. A successful AI tech entrepreneur, she had spent years of relentless hard work building her startup, and this sleek modern mansion in Austin, Texas, was a testament to her efforts. But that dream of tranquility had been shattered, for her neighbors, from teenagers to adults, kept trespassing on her property, turning her sanctuary into a chaotic public park. That day, the trouble started when Sophie heard laughter and splashing from her backyard. With a wary step, she walked outside, only to find a group of white teenagers, aged 15 to 17, frolicking in her pool with reckless abandon, their shouts echoing off the stone walls as they tossed a beach ball back and forth. Without hesitation, Sophie approached them, her voice firm but calm. "Excuse me, what are you doing in my pool? This is private property." The teens froze mid-splash, their laughter dying down as they turned to face her. A lanky boy with a mop of blonde hair and bright red swim shorts smirked with a casual shrug. "The gate was open, lady. We figured it was cool to hang out." His tone dripped with entitlement, yet Sophie's gaze narrowed, her patience wearing thin. "That doesn't give you the right to trespass," she replied with a steely edge. "I want you out. Now." The teens grumbled as they gathered their things, their footsteps dragging across the deck as they left, but Sophie's unease lingered like a dark cloud. With a sigh, she pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over 911. Yet she hesitated, thinking to herself, "They're just kids. They don't understand that nothing in this world comes free." Instead of calling, she decided to speak with their parents, hoping they'd grasp the seriousness of the situation. The next morning, Sophie knocked on the door of the neighboring house where the teens lived. With a determined stride, her pregnant belly slowing her steps, but not her resolve. A middle-aged white couple, the Murphys, answered, with forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. As Sophie explained the incident, Mr. Murphy scoffed with a dismissive wave. "It's just a pool, Ms. Jimenez. You're making a big deal out of nothing. This is a friendly neighborhood. We share stuff around here." Mrs. Murphy chimed in with a patronizing tone. "You're being too uptight. Kids will be kids." Their words stung like a slap, but Sophie kept her composure with a burning resolve. "This is my property, and I decide who uses it. Please make sure this doesn't happen again." Disappointed but undeterred, Sophie returned home, her mind racing with solutions. That same day, she hired a contractor to reinforce her fence, raising it higher and sealing every gap with fierce determination to protect her sanctuary. However, she still didn't feel secure, so she installed a state-of-the-art security camera system around the pool, hoping it would deter any future intruders. For a brief moment, she thought she'd solved the problem, but the peace she sought was about to be shattered once again. A few weeks later, Sophie's pregnancy had made her nights restless, her body aching as she struggled to find a comfortable position to sleep. By mid-afternoon, exhaustion finally caught up with her, and she drifted into a light nap on her living room sofa, with the soft hum of the air conditioner lulling her into a rare moment of rest. Suddenly, a loud burst of music jolted her awake, the pounding bass vibrating through the walls. Her heart raced as she sat up, listening closely, only to realize the sound was coming from her backyard, right by her pool. With a surge of anger, Sophie pushed herself off the sofa, her steps heavy as she stormed toward the pool area. What she saw made her blood boil. 5 white women, aged 50 to 60, were lounging with brazen confidence by the edge of her pool, their laughter echoing as they sipped beers and munched on sausages and smoked meats spread out on a folding table they'd brought along. Beer bottles floated lazily in the water, like discarded trophies of their audacity, while the smell of grilled meat hung heavy in the air. Without hesitation, Sophie confronted them, her voice trembling with anger. "What are you doing in my pool? This is private property. Get out now." The women turned to look at her, their expressions a mix of annoyance and amusement. A woman with dyed blonde hair, a floral swimsuit, and oversized sunglasses, clearly the ringleader, smirked with a defiant tilt of her head. "Relax, honey. We're just having a little fun. You weren't even using it." As Sophie looked closer, she realized it was Karen, the single woman living 3 houses down, who had repeatedly led her neighbors to disrupt Sophie's pool with unapologetic arrogance. Another woman, with a sunburned face and a wide straw hat, chimed in, with a mocking laugh. "You can't keep this pool to yourself. It's practically a waste." Fuming, Sophie pulled out her phone, her hands trembling as she dialed 911. The beeps rang out, urgent, but unable to drown out the raucous laughter of the women, as if they were deliberately trying to drive her up the wall. After a few short beeps, a gentle voice from the 911 operator answered with a professional tone. 911. "What's your emergency? We'll send police to your area right away." Sophie tried to keep her composure, her voice shaky but resolute. "There are people trespassing in my pool. They're refusing to leave." Even as she made the call, the women didn't budge, their laughter growing louder like a public mockery. Karen, the ringleader with the blonde hair, sneered with a smug grin. "Go ahead and call the cops, honey. My husband's tight with all the cops around here. I dare you to do anything about it." Karen's words hit Sophie like a punch, but she stood her ground with fierce determination burning in her chest. The faint sound of a police siren began to echo from a distance, a solitary wail cutting through the blaring music from the pool. Sophie turned, taking slow, deliberate steps toward the gate, with a desperate hope that justice would be served, while the women kept holding their beer cups, clinking them together in a cheerful toast, acting as if nothing was happening, their laughter ringing out like a relentless taunt. When Sophie reached the gate, the police car's wheels rolled slowly to a stop, the tires emitting a faint screech against the pavement. Stepping out of the passenger seat was a white officer in his 40s, with a stern face and cropped hair, followed by a younger officer around 30, with a sunburned neck and reflective sunglasses emerging from the driver's seat. They approached Sophie, but when they greeted her, their eyes didn't meet hers. Instead, skimming past her as if she were invisible, the older officer's voice laced with irritation. "Hi, we're here because of a report at this address. You the homeowner?" Sophie nodded, trying to stay calm, with a steady voice. "Yes, I am." "What's the issue?" The older officer, whose name tag read James Carter, continued with a cold tone. "We got a report that you're using toxic chemicals in your pool to harm people and animals. We need to check it out immediately. Do we have your permission?" Sophie, though furious at the blatant lie, kept her voice steady. "Of course you do. Please come take a look." Right away, the two officers headed straight to the pool area, their boots echoing on the stone deck like a cold, rhythmic march. When they got there, they stopped, their eyes widening as they saw the eerie reddish-purple water in the pool, glimmering under the sunlight, like the color of dried blood. The sign by the pool, with bold red letters reading, "Oh, warning, pool treated with strong chemicals, may cause severe skin irritation and damage," made them frown even more. Meanwhile, the women by the pool kept laughing and joking, their eyes gleaming with satisfaction as they glanced at Sophie, as if relishing the humiliation they'd caused her. One of them even shouting loud enough for everyone to hear, "Told you, they'll take care of her real quick." Officer James Carter cleared his throat, his voice sharp and authoritative. "Your actions are affecting the surrounding environment and could harm stray cats or wild birds if they drink this." The younger officer, with a perpetually sour expression, added with a warning glare, "We'll be back tomorrow, and if this pool isn't cleaned up by then, we'll arrest you." "Furious," Sophie explained, her voice trembling with rage. "This is just food coloring made from berries and leaves. I did it to scare off trespassers. This is my pool, my property." But the officers didn't listen, their bias glaringly obvious in the way they coldly dismissed her. That night, Sophie's phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, her heart sinking as she opened Instagram. To her horror, posts about her pool had gone viral, tagged as a free community pool by anonymous users. Strangers started showing up, with beach towels and coolers in tow, including a middle-aged man with a red baseball cap and a shirt sporting the American flag, and a young girl with pink hair tied in a ponytail and heart-shaped sunglasses, turning her backyard into a chaotic public park. The constant noise, splashing, shouting, and blaring music shattered any hope of peace, like a hammer smashing glass, and Sophie's stress skyrocketed. With her pregnancy already taking a toll, she visited her doctor with a heavy heart, only to receive alarming news. Her baby was slightly underweight, likely due to the stress she'd endured. The audacity reached its peak when Karen, with her platinum blonde hair and a gaudy leopard print cover-up, organized a paid pool party at Sophie's house, charging $30 a head for entry. Sophie watched in disbelief from her window, her hands clenched into fists, as Karen pocketed cash from strangers with a shameless grin, turning Sophie's private sanctuary into a money-making scheme. A nearby onlooker, with a white tank top and messy hair, muttered to his companion with a nonchalant tone, "She's really going all out, huh? But even if you call the cops, they won't do a damn thing. Karen's tight with all the cops in this area." That was the final straw. Sophie knew she had to act with a burning resolve to make them regret ever stepping foot on her property. Determined to put an end to this once and for all, Sophie devised a new plan with a fiery determination in her eyes. This time, she ordered a special dye, colorless, odorless, but designed to react with skin and fabric upon contact, turning everything a vibrant neon green. The next morning, she mixed the dye into the pool with a sly smile, knowing it would be undetectable until it was too late. Then she waited with quiet anticipation, watching from her bedroom window as the familiar group of women approached, led by Karen, with their usual arrogance. Without a second thought, the women dove into the pool with gleeful shouts, their laughter echoing as they swam, oblivious to the trap Sophie had set. From her vantage point, Sophie watched with a satisfied smirk as the water worked its magic. One by one, they climbed out of the pool, their jaws dropping as they realized what had happened. Their skin, hair, and swimsuits were now a vibrant neon green, like they'd stepped straight out of a sci-fi movie. Karen screamed with a horrified shriek. "What the hell is this?" Another woman with a now green ponytail and a polka dot swimsuit frantically rubbed at her arms with a panicked cry. It won't come off. The consequences were immediate and far-reaching. The dye had not only stained their skin and hair, but also seeped into their cars, clothes, and even their home's furniture. Like a stubborn curse they couldn't escape. For days, the women couldn't hide their neon green appearance, their shame forcing them to avoid public places, their jobs, and even their own neighbors. The neighborhood buzzed with gossip, with photos of the Green Ghost Gang spreading like wildfire online, their humiliation becoming the talk of the town. A week later, Karen stormed to Sophie's door with a furious scowl, her skin still faintly green, with a stained sundress clinging to her frame. "You can't just put toxic chemicals in your pool," she shouted with a finger pointed accusingly. Sophie stood firm with an unshakable resolve. "I told you to stay out of my pool. You ignored me, disrespected my property, and even tried to profit off it. That dye was harmless, just food coloring, but you brought this on yourselves." Her words were sharp, like a blade slicing through excuses, and Karen had no response, her face burning with embarrassment as she turned and left. From that day on, the neighborhood changed. The trespassers no longer dared to approach Sophie's pool, their fear of another green incident keeping them at bay. The once constant noise of uninvited guests faded, replaced by the tranquil silence Sophie had longed for. With peace restored, her stress melted away, like ice under a warm sun, and her doctor visits brought better news. Her baby was gaining weight, thriving in the calm environment she'd fought so hard to reclaim. Reflecting on the ordeal, Sophie realized a harsh truth. Prejudice, especially racial bias, still lingered, like a shadow that refused to fade, even among those meant to protect and serve. But she also learned that the only way to safeguard her rights was to rely on herself with fierce independence and to ensure that those who crossed her faced the consequences of their own actions. In the end, Sophie stood by her pool with quiet satisfaction, watching the water sparkle under the Texas sun, knowing she'd reclaimed her sanctuary and her dignity on her own terms. If you find the situation in this story interesting, please press the like button, and if you want to hear similar stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next exciting story.